program is the Active Center. It's created by David Sappe.
Pronounced C.P.
Pronounced Seppi.
All right, today we're going to tackle a huge topic, the Chinese Communist Party. We're talking about a century of transformation. It's a wild story of revolution, some really radical social experiments, and an absolutely mind-blowing rise to global power that has, reshaped our entire world.
So here's the big question, right? How did one party end up ruling over 1.4 billion people? I mean, think about that. It's probably one of the biggest political stories of our time. How a tiny group of revolutionaries back in 1921 built something that would eventually become modern China itself. The story of their power is the story of China.
Okay, so let's get the basics down first. When we talk about the CCP, you gotta understand, it's not like a political party on the West. Not at all. It's the whole system. It's the government, it's the administration, it's everything. In modern China, you can pretty much say the party is the state.
Now, to really get a grip on the CCP today, you have to go all the way back to its origins. And let me tell you, it was violent and chaotic. This party wasn't born in some quiet, peaceful debate hall. Nope, it was forged in the fire of civil war and foreign invasion.
So the road to power? It was this brutal 30-year-long slog. After a really nasty split with the ruling nationalists, you might know them as the Kuomintang or KMT, the communists started their own army, the Red Army. Things got so intense that both sides actually called a truce to fight a common enemy, Japan, during World War II. But once that was over, they went right back at it, and in the end, the CCP came out on top, and Mao Zedong founded the People's Republic of China in 1949.
And that fight against Japan, wow. The cost was just almost impossible to wrap your head around. We're talking somewhere between 14 and 29 million Chinese people, mostly civilians, died. This wasn't just a war, it was a national trauma on an epic scale. And it's absolutely central to the CCP's origin story. It's their claim to fame, right? They're the ones who finally unified and saved the nation from all that.
Okay, so now the CCP is in charge. And under their leader, Mao Zedong, they set out to do something insane. One of history's most ambitious, most radical attempts to completely re-engineer an entire society.
So first up in these grand experiments was something that started in 1958, and it was called the Great Leap Forward. And yeah, as that name suggests, the ambition here was off the charts. The goal was nothing short of revolutionary.
The idea was basically utopian. They wanted to skip decades of normal development and just jump. Transform China from a nation of farmers into a modern communist powerhouse like overnight. And how are they going to do this? Through sheer willpower and forcing everyone into these massive agricultural collectives they called people's communes.
But the reality? It was a total catastrophe. The agricultural policies were completely unscientific, people were faking their reports to look good, and it led to one of the worst famines in all of human history. The number of people who died is estimated somewhere between 15 and a staggering 46 million. The gap between that ideological dream and the human cost, it's just mind-boggling.
You'd think after that they might pump the brakes, but no. Less than a decade later, Mao kicked off another campaign. This time, it wasn't about the economy, it was about purifying the country's ideology. This was the Cultural Revolution.
And this period was just pure chaos and violence. Mao basically unleashed these super passionate youth groups called the Red Guards to attack what he called the Four Olds: old customs, culture, habits, and ideas. They went after anyone they thought was an enemy, destroyed priceless historical artifacts. They plunged the entire country into a decade of brutal, self-inflicted chaos.
So after Mao finally dies in 1976, the party is at a major crossroads. The whole era of radical, violent revolution was over. So what was next? Well, what came next would end up changing not just China, but the entire world.
And the shift was, wow, it was dramatic. The new leader, Deng Xiaoping, basically did a complete 180. Out went ideological purity, and in came pragmatic economic growth. They stopped focusing on class struggle and started opening up markets. It was a total philosophical U-turn that put China on an entirely new path.
So you might be asking, how does a communist party justify using capitalist tools? Good question. Well, they gave it a very clever name: socialism with Chinese characteristics. And this idea became the absolute foundation for China's modern economy. It's this hybrid model that allows for markets and private business, but, and this is the important part, all of it happens under the firm control of the CCP.
And you know what? This new model worked, in a way. It unleashed decades of explosive growth.
lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. It was an economic miracle. But it also created a whole new set of problems and paradoxes for the party as it entered the 21st century.
You can really see this evolution just by looking at the party's leadership. After Deng, you had Jiang Zemin, who actually changed the party's rules to let business owners join. Then his successor, Hu Jintao, was more about a collective managerial style. But the biggest shift, for sure, came with Xi Jinping. He has methodically gathered more and more power, using these huge anti-corruption campaigns to get rid of rivals. And then, in 2018, he removed presidential term limits, which basically paves the way for him to rule for as long as he wants.
So all this power getting concentrated in one person is happening right as China is facing a whole new set of really complex challenges. And ironically, a lot of these problems are the direct result of its own incredible economic success.
So what are we talking about? Well, on the world stage, the CCP is getting intense heat over its human rights record, especially how it treats ethnic minorities like the Uyghurs. Back home, it has to deal with the terrible environmental damage from its industrial boom. And maybe the biggest thing of all is this fundamental tension at the heart of its system. How do you maintain absolute centralized political control while also managing a super dynamic, modern, and globally connected economy? That's the real puzzle.
So when you look back at the last 100 years, one thing really stands out. The CCP's #1 trait is its ability to change. I mean, think about it. It went from a small revolutionary group to the disastrous radicalism of Mao, to the super pragmatic economic pivot under Deng, and now to the re-centralization of power under Xi. This party has constantly adapted to survive and to grow.
And that right there leaves us with the million-dollar question for the century ahead. The CCP has proven it can adapt, it can survive, it can build a superpower, no doubt about that. But can its current model, this highly centralized control, really navigate the incredible complexities of a truly globalized world? The answer to that question isn't just going to define China's next chapter, it could very well define the world's.